This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, welcome to Business Continuity for Law Offices in the Face of the Coronavirus. As you can imagine from the title, this is a whole lot of recommendations and thoughts on how to practice remotely and deal with the possibility or reality of being displaced from your office. I'll do a quick demo and we'll jump into this because there's a lot of stuff to cover. You do not have to write down notes furiously unless you want to, because all the slides you're going to see will be available as a downloaded PDF. And my email address is on the front page here on the first slide, and it's also going to appear on the last. And you can always email me any questions along the way. And I would also be interested to know if you have any comments about something I didn't talk about that you feel really works for you, what you plan to do in the future as it relates to these issues. If you're willing to share, I would be a grateful recipient of that. Anyway, my name's Baron, and I went to Ohio State for undergrad and law school a long time ago. I've been married 29 years, and I have 3 adult daughters. There's all the women in my life. And if you're wondering, even my dog is a girl, so I am wildly outnumbered in my family. I'm a partner with Affinity Consulting. We are a legal technology consulting firm, and basically we help law firms and legal departments with everything except e-discovery and hardware. All the other stuff, we do that. I live in Columbus, which looks like this, and except there's nobody on the streets right now, and probably the same where you are. I'm a document assembly and Microsoft Word expert. I'm going to talk a tiny bit about that today. And according to my family, I'm a really amazing cook. I don't really know if that's true or not. I sure like to do it, and I share my favorite recipes on Pinterest if you're into that. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about the subject at hand. To frame the discussion, what constitutes a business disaster? Well, technically, any event that makes the continuation of normal functions impossible. So, like a stay-at-home order, that would be a pretty significant interruption in the normal business functions. The severity is a function of 2 things: how long it remains impossible for the business to function, and the severity of the impairment. So, in other words, if you can limp along, that's not as good as being, very efficient, even though you're not where you would normally do your job at. You're home, you're someplace else. So for most law firms, this is a significant business disaster. We are not able to function normally. We are not able to serve our clients normally. We can't communicate normally. And so disaster avoidance is the ability to, avoid that entirely in the first place, or provide a quick means of getting back online and getting back up to where you were before the disaster occurred. Here's the really scary stuff. So according to the Business and Home Safety, an estimated 25% of businesses do not reopen following a major disaster. According to FEMA, 40% do not reopen, and another 25% fail within 1 year post-disaster. Those statistics were largely based upon events like Katrina and natural disasters. But the reality is this is no different than that in terms of interruptions to your business and displacement from your office. Like if obviously if I had a flood and I couldn't get to my office, the effect is the same as if the governor says you're not allowed to go to your office. Or even if you're considered an essential service, like in Ohio, legal services are considered an essential service. I assume it's the same in Michigan. But most law firms have shut down anyway and sent everyone home because they don't want the risk. And if one of my employees says, I'm really not comfortable coming to the office, even though we're, quote, an essential service, who am I to say, yeah, no, you have to come anyway? So most law firms have just, even if they could legally stay in their office, they're electing not to. So, the end game is the same. What causes these things? Well, obviously what we're dealing with. And unfortunately, I don't think there's any reason to believe that this is the last time this will occur, this type of a thing. If anything, as the population continues to grow on Earth, maybe this becomes a bigger risk going forward. Natural disasters, like some of the stuff that's going on with the climate change, like in 2016, where we had 5 1,000-year floods in less than a year. So the chances of those floods were 0.01%, and we had 5 in 1 year. It's just mind-blowing. And then with the fires and the hurricanes, et cetera, all sorts of crazy weather stuff going on that could take us out of our offices. Power failures, this happens fairly often. And fires, less likely to occur in an office building if they're up to code, but these things still happen. And even if my office is primarily dependent on an internet connection and the internet service goes down at the office, okay, well, I got to leave. I mean, I might not be able to do anything depending on how dialed in you are to the internet. So any of the foregoing events may cause you to have to work remotely. Therefore, and this is kind of a term we refer to all this stuff as practice portability. My ability to communicate, draft, work on my practice, access case information, render services to my clients from anywhere, not just my traditional office space. And there's some benefits to this, and I just wanted to go quickly over, this is not horrible, and I think it's going to dramatically affect the new normal. Is it possible for you to work with great efficiency when you're not at the office? Yeah, it is. If you have the right technology and the right systems, it absolutely is. Is it possible for lawyers and staff that work for your firm to do their jobs when they aren't physically present? And the answer to that is also yes. And honestly, so we started our business 23 years ago, and I came up through when I was young, everybody came to an office, and that's my whole career had been going to an office. Law firms didn't have quote remote employees very much back then, and so today we have employees in 13 different states. So our 52 people are spread out over 13 states. And honestly, I was not okay with that when we first started doing it. Maybe 17 years ago when we've hired our first remote employee. But ultimately, I was completely wrong for one thing, because I felt like we couldn't have culture, we couldn't have good communication, we couldn't share our work and collaborate effectively if we weren't in the same office. And the technology has just proven that to be inaccurate. So now, honestly, we get to hire the best people no matter where they are. We don't care about that. And we're in businesses like legal that are where performance is measurable. A lot of times we're tracking time, where we have work we have to get done, and the work either gets done or it doesn't get done. So it is possible to determine if somebody who you can't see is doing what you've asked them to do. So this is kind of a new dynamic, and a lot of people are dealing with that right now. The technology advances have simply created the ability to do this. We have a couple of clients, like medium-sized law firms, where they don't have an office. There's, let's say there's 25 lawyers. There's no offices anywhere. They all work out of their home offices, and then they do the executive office suite deal whenever they have to depose someone or they need in a conference room or something like that. The potential of a business disaster makes this a required capability. We used to get calls all the time, people saying, I'd be interested in being able to work from my vacation house in Florida 4 months out of the year. I'd like to be able to work from home occasionally. And those were always wants, but now it's become a need. This is no longer an optional thing, because these kind of things are likely to occur in the future, and we need to be ready for it. You lessen the severity of being displaced if you reduce the amount of time before you can work normally again. If you're thinking about this and you really can, if you really have practice portability, then a displacement is not going to be catastrophic for you. And then if you think about some cost benefits here, a lot of times behind payroll, your physical office space is your second biggest cost. So if you could eliminate that or alleviate that by maybe getting an executive office suite deal and then working primarily from home, you're spending a lot less money than you would otherwise. And, we're on a treadmill to some extent. I don't feel like I can ever get all the work done that's on my plate, and a lot of lawyers feel that way. And it's nice, even if, I'm in the den and my family is, 2 rooms away. It's still nice to be able to get up and walk over and chat with a family member and not be stuck in my office or tethered to my office, as a lot of people feel they are. Um, when I'm in the office, and we have an office in Columbus where we have 15 or 16 people, and it is kind of noisy and it is kind of distracting, and people don't always respect a closed door, and they knock and open up anyway and interrupt, and there's just a lot of commotion, generally speaking. And so it's kind of hard to get, when you're really trying to focus on something, sometimes it's better just to be by yourself someplace, and the best place to be by yourself might be home. And let me say one thing about that. So we've had a couple of experiences where we hired people who, for the first time in their careers, were going to be working from home, and a couple of them just couldn't deal with that. If you're an extrovert who gets their energy and recharges by being around other people, that could be a problem. I'm an introvert. Like I am perfectly happy being completely by myself. I actually like that, and that's how I recharge. I feel stressed when I'm around a whole bunch of people. Generally speaking, I mean, I'm not super anxious about it or anything, but it's the nature of an introvert. So that's one thing, that this doesn't work for everybody, right? So you've got to be cognizant of that. Some people just don't like to work from home and don't like the solitude and don't like the silence. And won't be comfortable doing that. So it's something that you might not know until you try it. And unfortunately, everybody's getting a good try of it right now. So if you're not comfortable with that, it may not be something that you can really change. As I mentioned earlier, getting the best employees, we used to think, oh, I'm going to hire someone for my department, therefore they must live within, roughly a 20-minute drive of our Columbus office. That's really limiting, frankly. And the best candidate might not be within 20 minutes of my office. The best candidate might not be in my state. And if I have systems established that allow us to communicate and share and work together, then I don't have to be limited to that. And I can broaden my search to find the best people no matter where they happen to live. And that's a pretty powerful thing. If you think about a law firm being, your greatest asset are your people. And getting the best people matters a great deal. And in today, even if you could be in a small town where there's not a big labor pool to pull from, and previously that may have been a hindrance, and maybe it wouldn't be in the future. And then you've got this whole demographic of people that are skilled workers and want to work, but just can't work full time and or can't come into an office. That doesn't mean they couldn't give you 3 hours a day of super high quality work. And again, you open yourself to that possibility if you have remote systems. And again, I totally didn't believe this. I'm a convert purely by experience, and I would have argued even today that this doesn't work as effectively as having everybody in the same office if I hadn't experienced it firsthand myself. And then, of course, there are tax benefits, very likely, to using a part of your home as your office. So another thing to think about. There used to be some rumors that if you tried to take this deduction, that you are going to subject yourself to a higher likelihood of an audit, and I think that's largely been disproven. Anyway, so your 35,000-foot remote working checklist. And so I look at, this is kind of crowdsourced, this whole seminar. We have just over 8,000 law firm clients across North America, so it's a pretty huge sample size. Law firms and legal departments, I should say. The ones that are able to deal with these kind of things very seamlessly and efficiently, what are the common denominators among them? One of those common denominators of success in dealing with these kind of interruptions is an electronic filing system to which they have remote access and which they rely upon. And that's probably one of the most important things. So I'm going to spend quite a bit of time talking about how to develop an electronic filing system and the problems that a lot of law firms experience when trying to do that, and how to overcome those problems. The next thing is, obviously, there's got to be a way for me to take my files with me if they're electronic. I need some kind of mobile hardware. I'm going to jump into a bunch of detail about that: laptops, tablets, 2-in-1s, etc. Then there's some other required hardware if you really want to work remotely, which I'm going to go over. Mobile communication. So my ability to communicate internally and externally with portability for that whole system. A lot of times a law office has a landline phone system that is literally part of their office space. In other words, it cannot be extracted from that. The only time your phone system works is when you're in the office and on your phone. It's not something you can take with you, but that doesn't have to be that way. And there's a bunch of things with respect to communication that we're going to talk about today. Billing and accounting with remote access. So some way of having an accounting system which I can enter time into, and I can run bills, run pre-bills, post payments against outstanding invoices, do a bank rec, et cetera. Anything I need to do, you should be able to do that from somewhere not in your office. And we'll talk about options for that. Some kind of a centralized shareable client database of contacts, information about files, and that usually takes the form of a case management system. So as part of this, I want to define that vertical, that technology. What is a case management system, and what are you supposed to get? What boxes does it check? You may want one of these, you may not want one of these. There's certain things that would make them more or less attractive, but at least I want you to know what you're supposed to get. And the problem there is there's literally hundreds of choices if you do a web search on this, and they all claim to be better than the other, and they're all, quote, matter management or case management systems. But they don't all have the same functions, and some of them are missing things we would consider required in order to be considered a case management system. So I want to give you some ideas about what to look for. Getting documents signed remotely. Obviously, let's say you're an estate planning lawyer right now. This is not a good situation because I typically am going to meet personally with my clients and we're going to execute documents. And we may not be able to do that in the same room. I might need to get documents notarized and I can't be present physically. So there's a bunch of issues related to that we'll talk about. Security and protecting client data when working remotely. All these people at law firms and legal departments are now working from home. And what does this security profile look like for those folks that are working from home? Unfortunately, sometimes it's a little frightening because there's no security whatsoever. So we're going to talk about that issue. And then some elements on like how to build out a home workspace. So that's kind of the itinerary for what we're going to go through. And I talk fast, but remember, you'll get this as a PDF. So everything I say is going to be in here, and you can ask all the questions you want after the fact. Okay. Before I jump into that, what is the new? There's a lot of talk about this. After this thing is over, then what? Like, what do we go back to? What's it going to look like? The first thing, this is kind of a joke and kind of not a joke. Who led the digital transformation in your law office? It was probably COVID-19. If you weren't all the way there, this was the inspiration for you to get there. And so if there's a silver lining to this chaos, it might be that this is going to cause the folks that were really putting off those moves to make those moves because they can't afford not to any longer. A couple of predictions about this. Practice portability won't be a luxury, it's a requirement. You're going to have this. It's going to have to be either a backstop or something that you can go to whenever you feel like going to it. Internet reliance is going to increase. So it might make sense to have a backup internet connection. I don't really have a separate slide on this, but I just wanted to bring it up. So my office, as you can imagine, is 100% reliant upon an internet connection. So our phones are voice over IP, so they don't work without an internet connection, and all of our systems are web-based. So the problem, of course, is if my internet goes down, I literally can't do anything. And we had an experience a couple of years ago where some people were doing utility work out on the street in front of our office, and somebody cut our internet connection, and we had no internet at all for like 2 days until they fixed that. So after that occurred, we were like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting that to happen because our lines are buried. Like it's kind of hard to cut the lines, and we hadn't had much experience. We'd been there for like 6 years maybe, and our internet had never gone down in 6 years. So we were feeling, unjustifiably comfortable with that. Anyway, what we decided to do after the fact, there were 3 different internet service providers that were available to our building. So we got an additional backup internet connection. It's not as fast as our primary. Our primary is really fast, and it's quite a bit of money a month. But we wanted to be able to limp along. Like I wanted our phone systems, like maybe I won't be able to do a bunch of web meetings, but I wanted everything else to work. So that we have an extra one coming in that hopefully we'll never use, and it's not a ton of money a month, but it was the loss of our internet that made us think we needed to have a backup. So that's just something to think about. I wasn't even aware that was a possibility. Turns out, yeah, you can do that. You can have a second internet connection coming in, provided you have more than one provider available to wherever you are. Law offices is going to have a more geographically diverse workforce, because I think this is going to show people that this is possible, and also it's going to force people to develop systems that support that. And as I said earlier, you're not going to need to limit yourself to somebody that's, driving distance to your office, reasonable driving distance. I think this is really. I used to ask people when I taught continuing legal education classes, which I do every week, on certain subjects, how many people have their own web meeting platform that they subscribe to. And like I just did one, for example, in Oklahoma. We did a tech show for them like right before the outbreak, like at the end of February. And I asked that question, and only 2 people in a packed audience raised their hand that they had a web meeting service. That's going to change a lot, right? Because everybody now is doing their GoToMeeting and their Zoom and WebEx, and people are more comfortable with it now, and not afraid of it, and realize this is actually a good thing. And I think that's just going to take over. Like a lot more meetings are going to occur that way, instead of having to go drive to someone's office and sit in the conference room. We're all going to sit at our desks. Lawyers less familiar with technology will be required to learn it. So this is on January 1st of 2020, Michigan became the 37th state to adopt the American Bar Association model rule changes that dealt with technology and the use of technology. And I've got on your screen right now, the Michigan Bar has a nice little summary of that. So specifically, Rule 1.1, the competency rule, the comments to that were, and I'm going to show you a couple of those as we go through this, were updated. And in addition, Rule 1.6, the confidentiality rule, was also updated. So you can read about this at the link that I've got on the screen, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. But basically, the American Bar Association promulgated rule changes in 2012, which addressed technology and made, arguably, technical competence a subset of professional competence. And I'll show you the language I'm referring to. Some states have responded very strongly to that. For example, North Carolina and Florida, which are mandatory CLE states. I know Michigan isn't a mandatory CLE state, but North Carolina and Florida, they're required CLE states. They've actually now have a separate category of technology CLE. They require every lawyer to get in every reporting period. So I think that's something that's going to kind of proliferate, because I mean, it's I think common knowledge that lawyers are making mistakes about this tech stuff. And the fundamental problem is we used to have paper everything. All of our data was analog. It wasn't so hard to protect that. I could lock files in a cabinet in my office and close the door and turn on the alarm, and it was pretty remote that anybody was going to get to my client data. But now everything's electronic, and as you know, electronic data is vastly more difficult to keep track of and protect than analog data. So it's being taken from and lost by lawyers on a daily basis, and the various organizations, bar associations around the country are acutely aware of that. And so I think you're going to see more, you will see more technology-related educational opportunities in the future, even in a non-CLE state like Michigan, that are going to help lawyers with this kind of thing. But ultimately, there's a generation of lawyers who didn't grow up with this stuff. So like I passed the bar in 1993. We didn't have anything then. Like there was barely computers. There was DOS computers and WordPerfect DOS. The internet did not exist in its current form. Nobody had email. It doesn't seem that, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old. It doesn't seem that long ago, but like every imaginable thing has changed in between then and now. The issue, however, is that my peers, mid-50s and older, never saw this stuff. And my peer group, they tend to be not very savvy when it comes to technology. We were told back in the day, don't worry about the technology, let the support staff people deal with it. You need to work on things only a lawyer can do. And then in between, technology became required to do things only a lawyer can do. And we had to try to figure all this stuff out. So there's a generation of lawyers that aren't terribly familiar with it. And now the rules have changed and said, look, you cannot disclaim responsibility for understanding how to use the technology tools necessary to do your job. And that makes logical sense, I think, to everybody. But it's a little frightening to people who are told to ignore it, don't worry about it, focus on doing stuff only a lawyer can do. And oh, by the way, now that requires technology. And then I asked this at the beginning, like, what are you going to do differently? If you've got some ideas that you plan on implementing after this is over so that you can protect yourself better in the future, I'd love to hear about it. If there's something I don't talk about that you think should be a part of this presentation, I'd love to hear it. So please shoot me an email with your candid thoughts. Okay, let's talk about the electric filing system. Why are I feel like I've been talking about this for 20 years. Well, I keep seeing offices that look like this. That's why, because of this. I go into an office, I'm like, what happened here? Now this is a typical lawyer's office, I think. And, this is a firm where they were scanning everything. And yet it looked like a paper bomb went off in her office. So, this is, unfortunately, this is how it is. This guy's smiling, but I don't think he's happy. I don't think he's happy. Lots of paper everywhere. And I want to be clear here. I'm not talking about eliminating all the paper. I'm talking about reducing it, having less. That every office can have less paper. Hardly any law offices can have no paper. No paper is really difficult, and usually there's some point of diminishing returns you have to be willing to pass in order to get rid of every shred of paper. Less is better. We thought when scanners first came out, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to have all my stuff scanned and I'll have electronic files. And then it didn't actually work like that. And I'm sure you've probably experienced this yourself. There are law firms out there that have completely wiped out all the paper and rely on electronic files. But in my professional experience, that's still a really uncommon thing. Most firms still have a lot of paper and have at least a partial reliance on paper files. And a lot of times we'll go into an office and some of the lawyers are completely reliant upon electronic files, and then another group are completely reliant upon paper. And they're working in the same office. So there's even different things going on within even sometimes the same practice area in the same office. It's really about the process. The process is, and I'm going to lay out a roadmap for you on reducing paper. It's not obviously just scanners. Otherwise, we'd all be done with this. We wouldn't still be talking about it. The deal is, if you have paper dependence, then you're going to have problems with remote access. So fundamentally, that's why this is a key thing for dealing with displacement from your office. You've got to have some way to take all that stuff with you and be able to access it remotely without lugging banker's boxes everywhere. So, it's fine to maintain some paper files. I get it. But your electronic files have to be complete. And in our experience, in a lot of offices, they aren't. There'll be documents they created in the electronic filing system. There'll be things they needed to email to somebody else. They'll scan that stuff. But it's largely missing notes, documents I didn't need to send to somebody else, emails, and attachments to emails. A lot of times those things are not present in the electronic filing system. And here's the deal. Just structurally, most firms we encounter are doing both things. And a lot of them are, by both things, I mean they have an electronic filing system and a paper filing system. And many of them, this is super common that we'll encounter a law firm that they're scanning everything. Everything that comes in gets scanned. And yet they're not relying on the electronic file. They're still using the paper file primarily as the single source of truth for any particular case. And if you think about that intellectually, you're obviously doing two filing systems. You're maintaining two filing systems parallel to each other. And that has to involve roughly twice the amount of work as having just one. So the first point is, you don't really get benefit from reducing paper until you let go of the paper. And so unfortunately, a lot of offices don't do that. They're paranoid. They want to, I got to make sure, what if I lose access to my electronic file? I want to make sure that I still got it in paper form. But you're really just punishing yourself as long as you keep doing that. And then conversely, there's firms, I've talked to tons of lawyers who want to rely on the electronic file, like that's their goal. but they don't have confidence it contains everything. And that really matters. If you have just a little bit of doubt that everything you need is only in the paper, or is not in the electronic file and is only in the paper file, you're going to gravitate toward the paper file just out of feeling better that you know everything's in here. So that has to happen. That's what I mean by they have to be equal to each other. And everybody has to feel confident that that's actually the case. Two basic methods you can use here: plain folders in the search utility, or a document management system. Like structurally, where am I going to store these files? And I'm going to talk about both these options. That, you know, this is what most people are doing, very inexpensive. A document management system, I'll explain what that is. And document management systems used to be crazy expensive, and really only big firms could afford them. And that, thankfully, is no longer the case. So here's the roadmap. And I'm going to spend time on each one of these things. I just kind of want to lay out what we're going to talk about. Backup systems and security that everybody believes in and isn't paranoid about. Some common denominators amongst the firms we've worked with who've had great success reducing paper: desktop scanners, dual monitors, and portable hardware. Searchable PDFs as opposed to image-only PDFs, I'll explain that. A search program or a document management system. And a search program allows you to very quickly look through, you know, hundreds of thousands of files in just a few seconds. So we'll talk about what those are and what recommended products we have for that. If you're not going to use a document management system, then you need one folder per matter. In the consistent file naming convention, I'll explain what I'm talking about there. Everything that comes into your office needs to be scanned. Email has to be stored outside of your email program so other people can find it. And that doesn't mean printing it. So we'll talk about that as well. And then collaborative technology, if I've got all these electronic files, I got to be able to share them with people by some method that's secure. And many times that precludes email because email is, you know, the files are too large. Then finally, it all needs to be written down, and you need to provide training for people. Okay, so I'm going to spend time on each one of those, some of them more time than others. Bulletproof backup and security. So just a couple of things to say about this. You've got to make sure, and most people can point to, if you've been doing it long enough, there was some point you had a crash, your server went down, and nobody could get to the files for some period of time, and everybody remembers it, and it was very traumatic, and some people are still suffering from PTSD as a result of what happened when they couldn't access their files for some number of days. Today, that can be eliminated. You can have multiple backup methods going on simultaneously. You can pretty much guarantee yourself, even if a catastrophic data loss occurs, that it would only be a few hours before you got back online. Some rules I've got on the screen. You know, you want to have multiple backups occurring simultaneously. It has to occur every day, no matter what. I don't want anybody to have to remember to do something for it to occur. I don't cherry pick, back up everything, but like if on my laptop, for example, I back up the entire hard drive. I'll talk about that in a second more. There's got to be some way to verify your backup is working properly. That's what I mean by check the backup log. I would like something off-site and on-site. And I want to focus here on the incremental backups and explain what that is. What lawyers need are versions, okay? So let's take a couple of examples. If I create new files primarily by opening old files, saving them as a new file name, and making changes to them, right? If you're going to do a settlement agreement and you've already done these before, you're not going to start with a blank page, right? You're going to find a settlement agreement you previously drafted for some other case, open it up, save as a new file name, and make changes to it. The problem is that's what people are always doing that when drafting legal documents, and sometimes we forget to hit save as, and instead we hit save. So in other words, I open an old file I intend to use as a template, and I make a bunch of changes to it, and then I hit save, and I overwrote my original. I'm like, oh no, I just wrecked this whole thing. Sometimes I don't even find that out that I did that. I don't realize I did that for a couple of days later. So what I want is I would like to be able to easily, unilaterally, without calling anyone or paying any money, restore the old version that I messed up. That's an important thing, right? And we constantly are working on documents and making changes to them and saving them on top of the originals. And this whole idea of having a version history is pretty important and legal. In addition, there's other issues. For example, let's say you have a billing system like time slips, and you come in on Monday and it's acting weird, and on Tuesday, people are getting kicked out. On Wednesday, it's really bad, and on Thursday, no one can get in. You come in, everybody tries to get in time slips, and it says, sorry, your database is corrupted. So you call tech support, and they go, okay, do you have a backup? And it sounds like your database is corrupted. And you think, yeah, I do. Well, let me explain what an incremental backup is. If a file changes, it doesn't keep versions. It simply overwrites the last one. So if my database, let's go to the time slips example. On Monday, so let's say my backup runs at night. On Monday night, my backup occurred, and it ran and it backed up the database that was getting a little glitchy. Then on Tuesday night, it backed up the database that was even worse. And on Wednesday night, it backed up the database that no one was going to be able to open on Thursday. So what do you have a backup of if you have a pure incremental backup? The corrupted database no one can open. The one you want is from last Friday, before all this stuff started happening. And if you don't have versions, you can't get that version of the database. So I'd much rather lose 4 days of time entries than all of my time entries. And so this is just something you want to ask. Whoever's responsible for backups, do you have versions? That's what I want to know. Do I have versions? And if so, how many? I would like to have at least 7 full rolling backups of every versions of everything, so that I could go back at least 7 days or 7 versions to find an old version of something. Then I think you should be able to run your own test restores. Again, not have to pay somebody to do that, and have a secondary method. You got to own this. A lot of times I talk to folks and they say, yeah, my IT person says I have a backup. Let me go back to this. Check the backup log. This needs to be verifiable by somebody, and it needs to be verified. Is this happening? A lot of times people have a problem and realize the backup was not working as they thought it was, or it wasn't working at all, and nobody knew. So just simply don't assume. You have to own this issue. You can delegate the issue, but somebody needs to be checking on it all the time. Step 2, the hardware. Again, what are common denominators that we see amongst firms that have had success in this? Well, here's a very common issue. When we go into most offices, we see decentralized printing and centralized scanning. In other words, there's little personal printers on every desk, and everybody can just print while they sit. But if you want to scan something, you got to go to the copier. Okay, so that's the centralized scanning. I cannot do it from my desk. I got to get up and go somewhere. What we recommend is the polar opposite of that: decentralized scanning and centralized printing. In the future, you're going to scan more and print less. And I want to make this convenient on people. And it is frankly inconvenient to use a copier for that kind of thing. And that's because the typical copier scan protocol is as follows. I got to take my document, I got to walk to the copier, and hopefully, if no one's making copies, because if they are, I got to wait, then I got to walk up to the little touch screen, identify it as me, I'm the person, and I'm not going to copy, I'm going to scan. And I put in the scanner, the copier, and it comes out, and I walk back to my desk, and one of 2 things typically occurs. It's either emailed to me as a PDF attached to an email, or the thing I scanned went right into some folder that I may have access to, and very likely all of the other scanned documents are also in that folder, so it's a giant mess. Let's say it's emailed. So I get the email, I wait for it. Sometimes, and I've been in offices where that takes 3 or 4 minutes for some reason. I don't know where it goes, but it takes a while for it to show up. Then it finally shows up. Does it have a name that you can use? Of course not. It's a date stamp usually. So you've got to go right-click, save as, and then double-click to find the folder it should have gone into in the first place, and then give it a new name that means something. And the question is, how long does that take? Well, we've timed it. I've followed people around with my cell phone with my little timer, and I'm like, okay, let's go scan something. I want to see what this process is like. On average, it takes about 7 minutes if they didn't see someone on the way to or coming back from the copier. They start, how was your weekend? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, 15 minutes now instead of 7. So this is, if you say to people, yeah, I want to scan, I want to have a complete electronic file, and by the way, if you want to scan something, you need to use the copier. What you're saying to them is, I would like to interrupt your workflow in 7-minute chunks over and over every day. And no one's going to put up with that. And in our experience, therefore, this stuff doesn't get scanned. So here's a telltale sign. I go into a person's office and I look for piles. I always like, what's this pile? What's that pile? I always want to know what the piles of paper are. And so an example, a couple of months ago, interviewing, she was a paralegal in this firm. And I said, what's that stack? And she goes, that's the stuff I need to scan. And I mean, it was like 6 inches. And I was like, that's from today? She goes, oh, God, no, it's just so annoying to scan. I just queue it up and save it up. And then I go over there and I'll just scan everything in at once. Okay, so that meant they had an electronic file which was missing 6 inches of stuff because it was annoying, right? That's what happens, or else it just doesn't get scanned. And again, you know, people start scanning only the stuff they have to email to somebody else, and then your file's missing a whole bunch of stuff. So again, success stories primarily relied upon distributed scanning. They allowed people to scan from their desks, and they did not. Now, maybe they still have copiers, and maybe their copiers can scan, but that wasn't where you went for your daily stuff. You did it from your desk. And I've got a little case study I'm going to show you in a minute. Scanners, key things we look for: sheet-fed, flatbed scanners, the kind with a lid and glass, which you would use if you needed to scan a book or a magazine. And the reality is, we're just not really scanning stuff like that anymore. Most of it is a loose sheet of paper. Sheet-fed scanners are smaller, faster, and less expensive than their comparable flatbed. So I would much rather have that. No glass. I can't scan books and magazines, but I don't really care. I need a document feeder. I want it to be reasonably quiet because I'm going to be on the phone sometimes when I'm scanning. I don't want it to be noisy. And it should handle black and white color, legal letter, anything less than that, and be reasonably fast. And I'll define what I mean by all that stuff. The news flash is, you don't need a copier if you have printers and scanners. And you can save a lot of money if you lose the copier. So if you unbundle, so if I have a complete electronic filing system and I need to make a copy of something, I just print stuff I already scanned, right? I'm going to get, and if you're scanning at sufficient resolution, which we're going to talk about, you'll be fine. It looks just as good as it did if it came off a copier. So, you know, it's not complicated. If you unbundle what a copier does, and instead of buying a copier or leasing a copier, you have printers and scanners, it's dramatically less expensive, and you're going to find that it's actually more convenient. I know a lot of people can't even imagine not having a copier in a law office. They've never experienced that before, but all of our clients that have done that, none of them have gone back to having a copier. In our own office, we've never had a copier, and no one's ever asked for one. We have centralized industrial printers, and everybody's got a scanner. So if you actually need to make a copy, you just print your stuff. So when it's time for the lease to be up on your copier, revisit this, unbundle it, and see if I bought a really nice printer and I put scanners on desks, what's the cost comparison? So here's an example of that. This is a firm in California. They had 3 copiers, which, by the way, everyone hated with a fiery passion. Like they were very expensive copiers, which didn't do anything they were supposed to do. They eat documents. People just complain and complain. Everybody I talk to, God, I hate our copiers. I don't even like to use them. They're nothing but problems, on and on and on. So that, and some people have experienced that. Plus, copiers are just fragile. They're always, in the law office I worked for out of law school, it was a 4-story building, and there was a copier on 3 of the 4 floors. Practically every day we'd come in and like the copier on floor 3 is down. Like there's always a copier problem. There's always a dude working on his copiers and cleaning the copiers, and then jamming the copiers. Like they're just fragile for some reason. Like in our office, we've had an industrial printer we've probably had for 14 years. It is never broken. It is never jammed. It is never, like we have it cleaned once a year, whether it needs it or not, but it otherwise just prints. Like we never have issues like we had with copiers. So I'm just putting that out there. So they were spending $39,000 a year for 3 copiers and 20 personal printers. So there's 20 personal printers scattered around the office so everybody could print. By the way, the personal printers, most expensive way you can print. They kill you on consumables. And of course, if you have like a HP LaserJet 1400 and next year they came out with a 1402 model, do you think the 1402 model uses the same toner as the 1400 model? Of course not. They want you to buy another toner cartridge for that one, and you end up with all these toner cartridges for all these various models of printers that you have, because you always got to have one in stock, obviously. So what we proposed was, I begged them to get rid of all 3 copiers, but they just couldn't wrap their heads around that. So they're like, all right, we're going to get 18, we're going to wipe out 18 of the 20, because 2 of the people they printed confidential stuff and they needed to do that in their office. So we're like, all right, we're going to keep 2 of them, but we're going to lose 2 of the 3 copiers. And instead, we're going to buy 2 industrial strength, smoking fast business laser printers that included, you can accessorize these things with a stapler, stacker, collator, and extra paper drawers underneath. So it already had like 2 paper drawers, and we had an additional 2,100 sheet drawer under that. Then we bought 8 ScanSnap scanners, little desktop scanners, our favorite little desktop scanners, and 1 faster scanner. How the numbers shake out. So if they had re-upped 3 copiers, 20 personal printers, they would have dropped $117,000 over 3 years. And by unbundling that and spreading it out, by decentralizing scanning and centralizing printing, they're only going to spend $44,000. So that was a $72,000 over just 3 years savings. And that doesn't even address the toner, which they were going to save roughly $1,600 a year just on the toner, because the toner for the industrial strength printers was way less expensive per page than all the little personal printers they previously maintained. So it can be that, it's often that dramatic. So keep that in mind. So if you do need a flatbed scanner, a couple of good options here. But again, our favorites are the sheet-fed scanners. And this one right here is easily the best in our opinion. And it's I'm sure the #1 selling scanner in North America, probably the entire world. It works on Windows and Mac. And by the way, this 30/60 means all the scanners we recommend scan front and back simultaneously. So this scans front and back simultaneously and automatically deletes blank pages before it ever shows it to you on the screen. So 30 pages a minute single-sided, and then the slash is 60 pages a minute double-sided. It auto-senses paper size, color black and white, orientation. So if you scan something upside down, it'll automatically make it right side up. It scans wirelessly. And there's a free app you can scan directly into your phone or directly into your tablet, and it's all touchscreen. Like, this is as good as it gets. So roughly, I think right now actually they're $3.99 on Amazon. They fluctuate between $3.99 and $4.20 or $4.19. If you want to step up in speed, you step up in price. So, you know, small scanners, but you've got a significant chunk of money more to get 60/120 or 80/160. You can make the call on that. Start inexpensive, see how it goes, and if you need something faster, you can always add one. And then they make portable ones. This one is pretty good. This is so slow, and it's so hard to feed in 1 sheet at a time. I don't find these to be terribly useful, but the S1300 isn't bad if you really want something small, light, and portable. But I would argue that this is effectively portable. They make carrying cases for these things. You know, maybe it weighs 6 pounds or something, but you can actually take that with you someplace if you were going to scan a bunch of stuff remotely. Another thing that was a big common denominator was the ability to review documents on screen. And it's hard to review a document that's tall when your monitor is wide and you have to page down a whole bunch of times just to see one page. So you can get monitors that rotate. And this, so all I did, a 22-inch monitor you can get for $99 almost anywhere. I mean, these are really cheap. 22 inches, not that big. But if you rotate it to portrait, and I taped a piece of paper to the monitor just so you could see that it makes a single piece of paper easily twice as big as it would be if you looked at it on your desk. So if you want to see it better, a lot of that, surprisingly, is just a function of flipping your monitor. So that's a function of the stand. Now, if your current monitors don't rotate, just go to Amazon.com or wherever you want to go to look for computer stuff, and type in VESA, V-E-S-A monitor stand. Any monitor built in the last 7 years or more recent probably has 4 little holes in the back of the monitor, and that's a standard connection. You see the little 4 holes in all these little guys here? So you can buy these things for single, double, triple, quad, and you can take the stand off your existing monitor and attach it to these. And guess what all these do? They rotate. So they tilt, swivel, and rotate. So even though you might have a monitor that doesn't do it right now, all you got to do is get a new stand. And these are as cheap as $35 to get a stand that'll allow you to do that. Then I would really consider getting dual monitors because you need to see more than one thing at once. So this is another thing. And okay, so we get asked all the time, why would you recommend 2 monitors when I could just get one bigger one? Because for whatever reason, the bigger monitors are a lot more money. They're almost always over $1,000. And you can get these smaller ones for a really sweet deal. So I'll show you like this one, I have a couple of these. So this is a curved, and by the way, once you go curved monitor, you'll never want to use a flat one again for the rest of your life. So I have dual curved 27-inch monitors that kind of wrap around me, and I really like that wraparound feeling. It's just so much nicer than flat screens. And look how cheap these are, $147. And this will connect HDMI, DisplayPort, or VGA, and it has speakers built in and USB ports and all kinds of stuff. So these are Visa compliant. So I just took off that goofy little stand and I put them on to the stands I showed you in that previous slide that holds two. I mean, can't beat that. 150 bucks each, so $300 total for two 27-inch curved monitors. Now they're high def, but they're not like 4K. I'm not watching videos on them. I'm doing word processing and email. So if you want to do, you want to watch videos on your monitor, then you might want to buy a more expensive, higher resolution monitor, but these work great for business purposes. Mobile computer or tablet. So you're going to need something. I'm going to talk more about this later, but you got to have some way of taking this with you, and I'll circle back around to that. PDFs. So a PDF is portable document format is what that stands for. And there are two primary flavors of PDF. There is an image-only PDF, and there's a searchable PDF. Okay, so let me just explain what I'm talking about. An image-only PDF, if I hit Control F and I type the word lease, it says, this page contains only an image. Would you like to run text recognition to make this text accessible? Okay, and if I hit yes, you're going to see a little bar graph down here in the bottom corner. And now it looks the same, except now if I look for a word, it finds the word. Now, why would you care about that? Well, because I have hundreds of thousands of documents I've scanned, and I can't remember what I call them, and I often can't remember the client's name. The only thing I can remember about it is like something inside the file. So in this case, if I remembered, Brad Reitzel was one of the parties to this, I could say, show me every single document containing the word Reitzel. And even though this doesn't have the word Reitzel in the name of the file, it would find this PDF anyway because it has a layer of text in it. So this is basically a PDF. This PDF is a digital sandwich. On top is the image of the original document that was scanned on a copier, and underneath it was the text. And you might be saying to yourself, aren't all PDFs, don't they all have the text in them? And the answer is no, they don't. If you make a PDF from a Word document or a WordPerfect document or an email or spreadsheet or any program on your computer, it automatically has so if I type, Jelson and hit go, it's going to find that. It's finding the layer of text underneath the image layer, right? The digital sandwich is finding the under layer. It came that way. If you make a PDF from a program on your computer, it automatically has the image layer and the text layer. The problem is, if I scan a document on a copier, it does not give you the text layer. So a lot of firms and offices have been scanning like crazy and creating all these PDFs, not realizing that none of them are likely to be found again because they've got no text. So an extra process has to be run on them after the fact in order to create the searchable PDFs. And this is really important. So even if you're using the search utility built into your computer, like Windows Instant Search or Spotlight on a Mac, it's not going to find the PDFs for anything other than file name if they don't contain text. If they do contain text, it will search for the documents containing the text you searched for. So it's important that if you're scanning and you're using your copier, you need to be aware of the fact that you're not getting searchable PDFs unless something's being done to them afterwards. Now, interestingly, all of the desktop scanners I showed you earlier have the ability to create the searchable layer of text underneath the image at the time you scan the document. That's like that's a standard function on a good desktop scanner, but no copiers have that. And if they do, they're even more insanely expensive than what I showed you earlier. So be aware of that. And let's say you go, oh my God, I've got 500,000 PDFs we scanned, and they're all image-only PDFs. What can I do? Well, if you have Adobe Acrobat, you can always open up PDFs. And like if I open up this, I could go to Enhance Scans, and I could say Recognize Text in Multiple Files. This is an Adobe Acrobat Pro feature. If you have Adobe Acrobat Standard or any of the PDF programs standard versions, you're going to be relegated to one file at a time. If you have 500,000, that's going to be months of work. This might speed it up a little bit, but it's still annoying. You're going to have to go find them, open them, convert them. It's going to bog down your computer while it's doing that. So that might be an untenable solution. Both of these products, you can basically install them on a server, for example, and say, all my files are in this folder structure, and it will just go out and burrow through all the files, and if it finds a PDF that's not searchable, it'll OCR it, convert it to searchable, and save it on top of the original file name. So basically, these two options will convert your PDFs to searchable PDFs while you sleep. And as long as the computers are on, it's out there working and converting your files. So that would be probably less painful than trying to do them yourselves one at a time or even in bulk. A couple of things about scanners just to be aware of. Dots per inch is the resolution that your scanner is scanning at, and they all are adjustable in that regard. So I talk to folks and they'll say, I'm not really happy with the quality of the scans I'm getting out of my new scanner. They're pixelated. When I print them, I can tell it was scanned. It's not as bad as a fax, but it's not as clear as a copier document. So you can adjust that. That's always adjustable. So just be aware of the fact that there's a trade-off. The higher resolution you go, so the better the quality of the image, the larger the file is in terms of bytes. So there's been several times where lawyers emailed me a file and like, why is this so huge? It's only 5 pages and it's like, 4 megabytes. It's so big. Why is it so big? Well, that could be a function of the resolution it was scanned at. The other thing that affects the size of the file is what's called color mode. So in other words, you can tell your scanner, like most scanners are set up to auto detect. And so if they find, first 2 pages of a letter, black and white, scans them as black and white, and then if it sees that there's a blue ink signature on page 3, it'll scan that page as color because it saw the blue ink and wants to capture it as color. That's going to result in a much bigger file than if it scanned every page as black and white. So you can either let it guess, or you can say, look, I'm only scanning these for archival purposes. I don't care what color ink the individual used to sign the signature block. I just want to see what the document looked like in the first place. Like I'm going to read it. So I would probably go black and white in that regard. And here's why. So what I did here is I scanned a 3-page document over and over and over and over and over. Here's what the document looked like, just to show you. So this is just a 3-page document. And I scanned this and scanned it and scanned it and scanned it. And all I did was change scanner settings each time. So if you do black and white, 300 dots per inch, your resulting file is only 195 kilobytes. There's 1,000 kilobytes in a megabyte, 1,000 megabytes in a gigabyte, 1,000 gigabytes in a terabyte. This is really small. If it looked for color, even though there wasn't any color, it was a completely black and white document, I have a 2 megabyte file for 3 pages. And if I did grayscale, which is basically it converts everything to a shade of gray, it's almost the same size as the one for color. Why is this so much smaller? Because each pixel is either on or off. It's either black or white. There's nothing in between. Is that okay for documents? Yeah, that's great for documents. Almost every document, that's perfect. Now notice, if I increase to 400 dots per inch, not much of a file size penalty there. So this is my favorite scanning is black and white 400 dots per inch, because I think when I print that, it looks as good as the copier produced one. And if I wanted even higher resolution, I go to 600, but you can see I'm jacking up the file size here about double. So that's the penalty. If you don't want to fill up wherever you store files, then you might want to ratchet that down maybe to 400. But a lot of times people have no idea what they're even scanning at right now. They don't like the way it looks. Well, maybe you're scanning at 200 dots per inch. A lot of scanners default to 200 dots per inch, and I don't find that acceptable at all. It looks terrible, I think. So you might want to mess with that. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. Search programs. Okay, and I don't, because we have so much stuff to cover, I don't have time to go over all this and show you, demonstrate everything in person, but I just want to try to make a couple of points here. The search utility, like if I go into Windows Instant Search and I click on, a folder structure, and I go up here and type, motion for summary judgment, and I hit go. Hopefully it'll find some files here. But it's gonna look for, so you can see it found a bunch of files. Now, I found 226 items containing motion for summary judgment. And back to my original assertion about PDFs with text inside them. This file clearly does not have the phrase motion for summary judgment anywhere in the title or the file name. It's inside the file. That's why this came up. So I would never have found this particular PDF if I was looking for it based on the phrase motion for summary judgment if this was an image-only PDF. So you can see the importance of that. I got all these different PDFs popping up that contain that phrase, and I might otherwise never find them again. Anyway, let's say this might be the one I want, but I'm not sure. Is there any way to just see what's in? Can I see the highlighted search terms? No, you can't. So this is a big problem. If I got 226 hits, and in order to find out the exact one I want, I'm going to have to double click and open each one of these, and then go look for the thing I have to go Control F and motion for summary judgment, and I see it here. And is this the one I want? No. Okay, then close it and move on to the next one. This is going to take forever. So one of the important things about these search programs is that you're familiar with this from when you do legal research. Like if I'm using any of the electronic legal research platforms, when I do a search, it'll show me in a little viewer the words I was searching for highlighted in the paragraph. Like it'll show me a little snippet of the document without opening the document. That's the important thing. And that's what these better search utilities do. Not only does it give you a hit list like what I just showed you, but when I click on a possible hit, it opens up a little viewer to show me the words that I searched for. And they'll allow you to use full Boolean logic. So and, or, not, W/5, meaning within 5 words of. You can put phrases in quotes to further limit your search. So, and you can see they're not terribly expensive. So these can be really powerful ways of mining through, millions of electronic files of whatever type you have to find the one you want. If you're a Windows user, then I'd recommend, actually any of these top 3. If you're a Mac user, I would recommend HudaSpot, and they have free trials. So you can always test drive these without spending any money. So again, not very expensive, but this will give you a viewer of the file, so you don't necessarily have to open everything. So I would definitely check that out as a better alternative to Spotlight, which comes with a Mac. Document management systems. I just wanted to go over real quickly what this is going to give you. It'll handle all your documents of any kind. You do get full text searching, which is what I was just talking about. I can make everyone use the system. If they want to save a file, they have to save it into the system, so they can't opt out. They all integrate with email and will allow you to easily save documents from emails and attachments to emails into the system with one click, usually. They'll allow you to apply security to each file you save. So if you want to limit access or completely hide it from other people, you can do that. It will not allow people to overwrite each other if you're working on the same files. So it handles electronic files like a library handles books. You check them in and check them out. If you've checked them out, nobody else can get them. They can get copies of them, but they cannot overwrite the original. So you eliminate the possibility of 2 people working on the same thing simultaneously and overwriting each other's work. It'll always allow you to keep track of versions, usually at least 256 versions of every file. And they obviously integrate with your word processor. You can automatically archive based on triggers, like if no one touches a file within 5 years, then go ahead and move it out of the main system into an archive. And then, of course, very importantly for purposes of this discussion, you can remotely access those files. So a lot more than just the full text searching. If you're just going to do folder structure, you're kind of limited just to this. But if you want to add more functionality, then that's what a document management system does. Here are your big players. And the one that a lot of folks are looking at now is NetDocuments. That's a web-based document management system, super sophisticated, incredible security, and you don't have to buy a server or any hardware at all. You just subscribe, and it's X dollars per user per month. So this makes high-end document management functionality accessible to even a solo practitioner. And since it's web-based, as long as you can authenticate yourself, you can access your entire filing system from any tablet, phone, or computer connected to the internet. If you don't have a document management system, then you need to have one folder per matter. And this is kind of uncommon that we see this. In the firm I worked for example, me, a guy, one of the partners named Steve, and a paralegal named Suzette often worked on the same matters together. Well, our whole folder structure on our server was set up by lawyer or user initial. So I had a folder BKH, and on all the cases I worked on were subfolders under BKH. Steve had SDR, and Suzette had SYD. That's what her initials were. And so if we all three worked on the same case, then each of us had a folder under our initials, and there was no folder that contained everything for the matter. Now, our paper files were consolidated. There was one paper file per matter, which makes sense, but our electronic files were in no way mirroring that. And that was a problem. You had to know who worked on something in order to find the case file in the first place, because it was by username first, then by client, as opposed to client first, which is what it should have been. So that cannot persist. If you want to get an electronic filing system that works, you can't have everybody with their own foldering system. So one folder per matter that everybody works out of. And then a file naming convention that makes sense to people. And I'll give you a suggestion here in a minute. Otherwise, people will just come up with whatever kind of crazy file naming convention they think works for them, and everyone else in the office might have no idea what they're talking about. So something that is written down and disseminated to everybody else. You're not stuck with these short little file names like we used to have to deal with in DOS. You got 255 characters to name a file today. So roughly a couple of sentences if you want to be super verbose about it, but you don't need to chop it up into something short that nobody will understand what it is. We favor this approach. We begin with the date. So 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day. That is like a timestamp. So it's either when it left my office, if it's something I created, or it's when I received it. So let's say the mail comes in and it came in on Friday, but I didn't scan it until the following Monday. I'm going to date it the Friday that I received it and not the date it was scanned. This is the type of file, like document type, and then description, and then the suffix is controlled by the program you're using. In this case, Word is going to stick a docx at the end automatically. You're not going to mess with that. But what this does is when I go File Open, if I click on a folder that's been set up like this, it sorts by date. So it's chronological by the date I received or the date it left, and that's why we do the date stamp up front. Yeah, that you can do whatever you want. I'm just saying this is a nice way of seeing things in a chronological order. I would subdivide the folder. Like if you work out of red welds that have manila folders inside, and let's say I've got, like let's say it's a probate matter, and I've got pleadings and assets and liabilities and correspondence, those kind of subfolders that you might put in there, then have that same exact subfolder configuration electronically. You can call them whatever you want. You can have as many subfolders as you want. And then it mirrors exactly what you're used to in the paper system, and I don't have to explain anything to anyone. It's intuitively obvious what's going on here. I open up a folder and it's got subfolders. I click on the subfolders and I see the stuff. So not hard. Step 6, everything needs to get electronically scanned. So for example, notes. I take a lot of notes on legal pads. I like to write on legal pads. I don't even know why. I can type really fast, but it's not always appropriate to be banging on a keyboard when you're talking to somebody. So I write notes. I need those notes to get into the client file. So I scan them, right? So I scan all the time. I'm scanning yellow legal pad pages into a client's file. Not a big deal. I'll talk about what to do on the email in a second. And you want to make your active file digital. A lot of firms will go, yeah, okay, when this is over, we're going to scan it. No, scan it as you're doing it. Then when the file's over, you don't have anything to do. It's already, the file is complete. You've been adding to it the whole time. I find that if you wait till the end, this becomes this annoying big job that nobody wants to do. And a lot of times, if it's a paper file that you've been relying on, there's a bunch of stuff in there that doesn't need to be scanned. There's duplicates and triplicates of things. There's garbage that doesn't need to be scanned in any event. And somebody's got to go through it first and decide, well, what of this stuff should we scan and what of it should we shred? You just create all this extra work. It becomes this big project. Nobody has time for it, and it just sits there and sits there and sits there. That first picture I showed you way back at the beginning of that super messy lawyer office with paper all over the place, in her defense, what she said was, well, these need to go to closed storage, and I got to go through all of them first and decide what do we really need to keep. So that's a perfect example. Why were they? She had so many files in her office, she could barely walk through, come in her door and get to her desk. And what was the cause of that? She had this big project she didn't have time to deal with. And that was to go through all the files and figure out what we need to keep. So just avoid that by making it electronic as you go. So faxes, for example. There's all kinds of internet fax services. We use RingCentral. We have the same fax number we've had for 23 years. And all we do is we converted it over to RingCentral. And now every time we get a fax, it's emailed to me as a PDF. So we no longer have a fax machine. But if people use the same fax number they've always used, if I want to send a fax, I can either do that via email. So I type the recipient's address is their fax number at rc.com, and then the email becomes the cover sheet, and any documents I attach of whatever type gets faxed in the order they're attached. Or they have a little app that I can launch, and then I can just enter the fax stuff and attach. Obviously, it requires that if I have a hard copy, I've scanned it, because otherwise I can't upload it to their system. But it works great, and it's so cheap. We pay like $12 a month for all the faxes we can eat, and my phone line alone was $45 a month before we did that. So this is a much better deal. I don't have to scan anything. It's not injecting paper into my workflow. It's already electronic. I would recommend not scanning every bit of mail that comes in, because usually half of it is garbage. Instead, distribute the mail to each person. And if they have a scanner on their desk, even somebody who's grumpy about that, it can't possibly take them more than a couple of minutes to file all their mail. It's not nearly the annoyance that people sometimes think it is up front. Email stored outside your email program, right? I'm trying to share pieces of correspondence with other people in my office. If it's sitting in my inbox, nobody else can see it except me. A lot of people deal with that by printing. How's that worked out for you if you're doing that? You feel any better? Have you ever found a critical piece of information on a printed email you couldn't find anywhere else? Probably not. And if you could, then I would argue you need to improve your email management protocols, if the only place you could find this critical piece of information was on a printed email. Instead, I would recommend that you do this with electronic files. So let's just give you an example here. I want to show you two things. First, I'm going to open up Chris's email. Chris has got a bunch of attachments to this. I'm going to print a PDF. So I print, switch my printer from my LaserJet. Come on. Oh, perfect. There we go. Adobe PDF, and I hit print, and it's going to say, where do you want to put it? I'll put it on my desktop. I'll hit save. And what am I going to get? I'm going to get a PDF, and here's all the files that were attached, right? There's the names of the files. Where are the files? Are they here? No, they're not. So if I open up this email a year from now and want to know where these files are, if I forgot to separately save them, they might just be lost. Now I'm going to make a PDF from this, and I'm going to do one thing slightly differently. I have multiple PDF programs on my computer, one of which is Adobe Acrobat. Adobe Acrobat integrates with Outlook, which is the email program I'm using. So if I make a PDF by clicking on the Acrobat ribbon and clicking this button, it's going to look roughly the same, but the PDF is going to be better, and you're going to see why it's better in a second. So just wrap your head around this. A PDF is this cool electronic file that contains an image and can contain annotations and can contain text. It can also hold other files. So if I go to this short form loan agreement and double click it, it's going to open the Word file that was attached to that email in its original format as a Word file. It did not convert this over to some other format, right? This is still a Word file. And the PDFs remain PDFs. So if I go down here and I double click this, I open up the PDF that was attached to that email. And they are not linked. This is not a link. So if I email you this PDF and you double click these, you will have those documents, even though you obviously couldn't have been linked all the way back to my system to something that I emailed to you. So these are separately captured. So this is a much better PDF than the first one, because it looks exactly like the original email and it contains all the attachments in the original email. That is a function of the integration between the PDF program and your email program. So that is a really important little upgrade. And another thing you could do, if I click on my Acrobat ribbon here, I could pick Chris and Paul, and I'll get, let me pick somebody else here, Jennifer, and I'm going to make a PDF out of all of those emails that I selected. So I'll hit save. Now it's going to take all 3 of those emails, and it's going to put them in a single PDF. This is called a PDF portfolio. The thing that Jennifer sent me has 23 attachments to it. This has 11, this has 4, and I've got all of those attachments plus all the emails. And so this is kind of like a Redwell file, only electronic. And let's say that Bill sent me another thing, and I want to. This is the same case, and I want to add Bill's email to that same PDF. I can say append to the one I just made, and now Bill's email is attached with its own attachment with the other 4 emails inside a single PDF. So the takeaway here is you could, if you wanted, build a single PDF which contains all of the emails for a particular matter, or you could do them one at a time. It doesn't matter. But if you have an integrated program like Acrobat, Power PDF, Foxit Phantom, or Nitro, they all have that same capability, and actually these 3 cost a lot less than Acrobat. You'll capture the attachments as well. So that's a major upgrade there. Collaborative, you got to have some way of sharing files. So collaborative tools, and there's all kinds of ways you could do that. Share files, probably one of my favorite things for is sharing files outside of email with other people. A lot of folks use SharePoint, which is free as part of Office 365. Many case management programs have what's called a portal. So your portal means it's a way of sharing. With Clio, you can share even tasks and all invoices, any case information you want to share with your client, not just documents. But a lot of them have some platform by which you can share documents securely with people and never use email. So that's, if you've got a case management program of any kind that's electronic, you might want to look into that. That's probably a feature you're just not taking advantage of. Okay, training. I know a lot of these tools seem simple, but you need to get training so that everybody understands how to use them to their maximum capability. Most people wildly underutilize their technology, and you remedy that through training. So just make sure that you go through that with everyone. And the people who are really crabby about going to an electronic file, this really scares people legitimately. If you've had your whole life, you've relied on paper, it's like a security blanket. You go to trial and you don't have the paper, you can't even imagine that. So the training, if you walk people through a case and you walk people through, okay, we're going to go to trial and we're going to bring this all on our laptop or iPad, they have to experience it sometimes. And that's really powerful and important. So even the people who think, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to participate, have them sit through the training anyway so they can understand how the system works. And a lot of times those people end up participating when they thought they wouldn't because they saw it really wasn't that hard. Make it part of your employee manual. And now that you have an electronic filing system, it's time to rely on it. And what we recommend is pick a type of paper after everybody's comfortable with the system, and stop keeping the paper version, like correspondence. You could say, I'm only going to keep correspondence electronically, and we're not going to keep it in paper form. Pleadings, there's faxes, there's all kinds of things. You're going to stop printing email, and instead, you're going to store it electronically. And your files will become thinner as a result of that. It's perfectly fine to have some paper and some electronic, but the idea is I'm not getting benefit unless I start losing some of the paper I was previously managing in analog form in a paper file. So that has to be the focus. Wrap your head around this. You can put 42,000 banker's boxes of documents on one external hard drive that costs $90. So you could basically archive every file for every closed file you've ever done in your entire career, very likely, would fit on a single $90 external hard drive. And if you're paranoid, buy 3 of them and put all that archive on all 3 of them. Put one in your safe deposit box, one under your bed, and one at your office. There's no way you're going to lose that stuff. And they don't need to be plugged in. Once they're loaded, it's not like they need to have electricity to retain their data. So if nothing's connected to it, there's no way for them to crash because they're not actually operational unless you plug them into a computer. So very inexpensive ongoing storage. The problems previously described, pretty much all those things go away if you rely on an electronic file. In addition, and most importantly, you have remote access to these things. So how would I get remote access? There's basically 3 approaches. Option number 1, sync files to laptop. So let's say I have Dropbox, and I got 4 people in my office, and we have a business Dropbox account, which is you should have if you're going to use it internally in an office. Then all the files are synchronized to all 4 computers. So if I create a new letter and save it under the Dropbox folder and subfolder structure under that on my laptop, on my C drive, within 90 seconds, that document is on all the other 3 computers. And those users don't even know it's there unless they go look for it. Now, if one of the others opened up that letter and made a change to it and saved it on top of the original, it would be on his or her laptop, and then the modified original would be synced over to my laptop automatically without me even knowing it. Now, if I'm disconnected from the internet, I still have all the files that were synced to my computer as of the last time I was connected to the internet. And then if I reconnect to the internet, all the stuff that happened when I was offline gets synced into my Dropbox. That's how all these services work. So that is a really handy way of making sure everybody's working off the same pool of documents without requiring a file server. And that's going to give you remote access whether you're in the office or you're not in the office. So it doesn't matter. Cloud sharing, where you've got something like SharePoint, which we're storing files in, or something like network attached storage, which is it's basically a box of hard drives in your office connected to your network, which everybody would see as like a drive letter, like an S drive or something like that. So if I look at something like this, $849 for 16 terabytes of redundant storage spread across this is 4 hard drives this little box holds. So I can't run a program from this, but I can store all the files I want on this. And everybody in my office will be able to see it regardless of whose computer was on. I didn't have to pay $10,000 for a file server. All I want to do is share files. And why do you think this is called My Cloud? Because it's accessible remotely. So you can actually tap this. You basically created your own private cloud. I can access the files on this thing from a computer connected to the internet, even though this is in my office. It's not like some cloud server and we don't even know where it is. So I have physical control over my files. And you could set this up as a RAID array, those 4 drives, and then it would share the data across all 4 drives. So if one of them crashes, you don't even have to turn it off and you didn't lose any data. And these are hot swappable. These are little flip switches. You can just flip that up and slide the drive out, put a new one in and slide it back in like a piece of toast in a toaster. So this is some pretty sophisticated stuff for not much money, and a really great way of sharing files if you want to do that internally and still have remote access. And then of course, you could take over your computers from your home computer using something like Go to My PC, which is like remote control software. Or maybe if you've got a server, you've got a virtual private network, aka VPN, which gives you file access to the files sitting on your server at the office from your home computer. Other hardware considerations. Basically, there's 2 things you could do. You could have a laptop, make it your one computer, and then everything's with you all the time. Or you could just say, I'm going to use my home computer to remotely control or access stuff back at the office. I favor the first option. I'd rather have a laptop that has everything with it on all the time and not be reliant upon some ability to take over my computer remotely at the office. That doesn't work in every, like if the power's out at the office, the internet's out at the office, I can't take it over. But if I had my laptop, I'd have everything with me that I need, and I just feel better with that arrangement. If you're looking for a computer, you want something that would be classified as an ultrabook, which is basically everything you want in a computer. It's thin, light, powerful, great battery, touch screen, very secure with hardware level security built into the device. You may have heard of these. 2-in-1 convertible. Either the screen can detach and it can be, this is a Microsoft Surface book. You can pull the screen off and use it like a tablet, or dock it back on and use it like a laptop. Or I see these more commonly where the screen will fold all the way around flat on the back, and it goes into quote tablet mode, and you can use it even though it's maybe a Windows computer, laptop, it can become a tablet. So these are hybrid devices. It's a tablet when you want it, it's a laptop when you want it. And this is where everything's going. They're converging tablets into laptops, and that's why tablet sales are declining a bit, because people are tired of carrying around two devices, and this makes it really easy. Then, of course, there's a Windows tablet like a Surface or an iPad. Here's what I do. I've got a docking station. In case you're not familiar with what a docking station is, just a little box that plugs into my laptop, and then plugged into the little box or the dock are all the other things that I use. This is the back of my dock. So it has 3 monitor ports, so I can plug in up to 3 monitors simultaneously. It's got all kinds of USB Type-C and Thunderbolt ports and a network port and the power. And basically, I go in and I plug in this one little cable into my laptop, and that connects me to 2 27-inch monitors, a full-size keyboard, full-size mouse, my voice over IP phone system, my scanner, my speakers, network, everything. I plug in one little thing and I'm connected to everything. And then what do you think I have at home? The exact same thing. So I've got the same dock, same monitors, same keyboard, same mouse, same phone, blah, blah, blah. Come in, plug it in. My home office is exactly the same as my office. It's comfortable and it's easy to go back and forth. All I got to do is unplug one thing, throw my computer in the bag, and I'm out. So the dock is an important piece of this. You can't assume that everybody in your office has some computer that they can use to remotely connect to your office system. So it might be time to consider getting everybody a laptop. That's what we have decided to do. Laptops do cost more than a desktop, and the docking stations add to that cost. But ultimately, if just once a year my employees and myself can work when we otherwise wouldn't have been able to because we had a laptop, I've easily cost justified the incremental cost between a desktop and a laptop. So something to think about. You certainly can lock down laptops and they can be secure. We'll talk a little bit more about that further into this presentation. We get asked a lot, like, I'm thinking about getting a laptop. I went to the computer store and, oh my God, I have no idea what these people are talking about. They say all these words I don't understand. They scare me. I just want a laptop. What should I get? I just want to give you a really quick, here's what I would be looking at. We don't sell hardware. I don't care what you buy, but I am a computer geek and I keep up on all this stuff. So basically today, your first decision point is what size screen do you want? Bigger the screen, bigger your laptop, heavier your laptop. Okay, so my eyes aren't great. I wear reading glasses, but I hardly ever use the 13.3-inch screen on my laptop. I'm almost always connected to external monitors as I am now, so it's not that big of a deal. And I wanted really thin and light. My computer only weighs like 2.5 pounds. I don't even know it's in my computer bag. It's so light. That mattered to me. That was my most important thing. You can get it with a touch screen or not, but this is going to really affect the weight and the size of the device. So you're going to have to make a choice there. I would get at least 16 gigs of RAM, 32 be fine, 8's not okay. Your internal storage, these things aren't upgradable really in laptops today. So like it used to be, I could get 8, and if I needed more, I could add another 8. There's a little panel on the bottom of the laptop. I'd get a screwdriver and add another memory chip. It's not like that anymore. It's all hardwired onto the motherboard, so they're not really upgradable any longer. And so you want to maybe overshoot what you think you need now. If you say, well, I'm going to use this for 3 or 4 years, then you need to be thinking about what you might need 3 or 4 years from now. So I'd get bigger, more memory, more hard drive. And so you want a solid state drive, not an old mechanical drive with little spinning platters. I would just go terabyte. You can even get up to, I've seen 2 terabyte drives, and that's an insane amount of space, but no one ever complains they have too much space, only that they don't have enough. So I'd rather err on the side of having too much. Backlit keyboard, kind of a standard feature today on laptops. I use my laptop in low light situations all the time. And I like having particularly on airplanes, I like having the keyboard light up behind so I can see it. Security built in. On my case, my power button is also the fingerprint reader. So I power it up and then I just retouch the power button with my finger and automatically logs me in. In my case, decrypts the entire hard drive because all my security is connected to that as well. I can use a password if I want. It's just more convenient to use a fingerprint. If you're getting a Windows machine, you want Pro, not Home, because all the security stuff is built into Pro and not in Home. And with Mac, you just get OS X and it contains everything you need. I would want a 3-year next business day on-site warranty plus accidental damage protection on. I get this on all the laptops I get. I have a Dell XPS 13, which is arguably the best laptop that exists today, depending on what review you read, but it usually wins. And I got a 3-year next business day on-site warranty. Anywhere in the continental United States, something goes wrong, they'll fix it the next day. And if I broke it because I dropped it or did something bad, it doesn't matter. That's still going to get fixed for free. Finally, I would look for either an i5 or an i7 processor and an 8th, 9th, or 10th generation. 10th generation is the most recent. Intel constantly improves their chips, and they classify them by generation. You get an i3, but I would just, for business use, i7 is probably overkill, but I just wanted the fastest thing I could possibly get, so that's what I got. I'm going to drop a little knowledge on you for this Intel stuff. i3 579, yeah, they have 9s now. As you increase numbers, you're getting a faster engine for your computer. Here's how you tell what generation it is. I'm sure you've seen these little codes for computers. Core i7, the first number following that is the generation. So 10th generation, 9th generation in this case. And I'm looking for 10 because that's current. I won't always be able to find it. But if you see like a 7, why would you buy a 7th generation processor? I'm sure it's a great deal, but you're 3 generations behind. Power consumption is the letter at the end of the processor description. So here's an interesting example. There's a Dell XPS 15 and a Dell XPS 13, right? The 15 has a 15.6-inch screen. It's significantly heavier and bigger than the 13 that I have. The 15 has an H processor, so it's like, serious power and doesn't care so much about battery usage. The U is what's in mine. So even though they're the same model, the only difference is screen size. They come from the same manufacturer. They have different processors in them. So, and this is what you're going to find most commonly. And then these are really uncommon, and you do give up power there. So I probably wouldn't be too interested in one of those. I've got a link there at the bottom of the screen you can click on if you want to read all about Intel processors. I just want to make you a more informed consumer about that. If you're going to get a docking station, you'd probably want a good keyboard mouse combination. My laptop sits over on my credenza. I don't use the screen or the keyboard. I use external everything when I'm connected to the dock. So they make nice combos. My favorite are Logitech. The best mice, in my professional opinion, are Logitech as well. These are travel mice. I have 2 of these. And these don't need a mouse pad, which is nice. What's nice about them, they're called Anywhere mice. So they don't use one of those optical red lights underneath. They use instead a video camera. So this will track perfectly on clear glass, shiny tables, other things that would totally wreck a normal mouse. This has no problem with. And these have rechargeable lithium-ion batteries, so I just recharge them like once a month and we're good. Love the Logitech mice. On-prem servers, do you have one of these? The question is whether you need it. We visit firms all the time that have servers that kind of limits the remote access, and they were talked into it by their IT people. There are benefits to having a server. Can you get all those same things without a server? Absolutely. And my point here is don't get scared into buying one just because your IT company makes all their money by selling and installing servers. That doesn't mean you need one. The question is, do you have software which requires a server in order to function? If that's the case, then you might need a server. But even then, you don't have to necessarily buy one. You might be able to get a hosted server or rent access to one, which would cost you way less money. The point is, get a second opinion on the hardware stuff. A lot of times people get so ingrained with their IT providers, and their IT providers only know one thing. If all you do is sell servers, then you think everybody needs a server, and that's just not the case. So ask some other people, get a second opinion, and get as much information as you can before you make that call. If you're doing pretty basic stuff, an iPad might work. Otherwise, not really. So just for example, Word for iPad, not even close to the same thing as Word for Windows or Mac. I cannot create certain legal documents. The formatting required is just not a function available in the iPad version of Word. I know they're both called Word. They're not the same at all. So it depends on what you're doing as to whether or not an iPad would do everything for you. However, the trade-off on a 2-in-1 is not big, right? So if you really want to have tablet functionality and also have a laptop, then you just want to look for a 2-in-1. And there's lots of choices out there. All the major manufacturers except Apple offer that. What about a portable printer? Hey, they make those too. This one in the middle here is even a multi-function. So it'll be a copier, you can scan, or you can print with that. Very reasonably priced. They can run on battery. They can connect to your computer via Bluetooth or with a cable. Really handy if you need to be on site and print documents in a pinch. Previously I mentioned they have scanners. I favor this one over this one, but they do make portable scanners as well. We get this question a lot. What about a multifunction versus a separate printer or separate? In other words, this only scans and this only prints. This prints, copies, and scans. Our experience has been that if I spend less than $500–600 on one of these, it simply won't last, and I'll end up replacing it in like 18 months. Whereas if I buy a scanner to scan and a printer to print, I might get 10 years out of these. I know that seems crazy, but that is not unusual. These are never going to last 10 years, in my experience. So, again, I don't care what you buy. I'm just saying our experience has taught us that it's better to spend an extra $100 and get separate devices that do one thing than get a multifunction, depending on your volume. If you're just, I'm hardly ever going to work from home, I know I'm not going to be printing that much stuff, it's not a big deal, then maybe this would work. They are a bit cheaper, but it's volume that ends up causing the problem. Let's say you want to be able to do postage. Well, there's portable systems for that as well. We have one of these in our office, and we have a lot of clients that use these Dymo label printers, and they love them. So you can buy these at any computer store and Amazon for sure. So this one is including the scale, the postage scale, and it'll print the mailing label and the postage simultaneously, $218. And this is a small little thing you could easily throw in your bag and take home if you needed to do postage at home. If you didn't need the scale, then you're down to $135. So these are silent. They connect to your computer via USB. They have a little add-in in Word, so you can select an address and a letter and automatically generate the label. And these they make clear labels. Anything you can think of, they handle. Really fantastic. One of our favorite little recommendations. Easy upgrade. You might need a DVD drive because most new computers don't have them. So you can get externals for $30 at any computer store. What I liked about this one is it has both. It has USB 3.0 and USB Type-C. So whichever one you're connecting to, you just plug it in. Mobile communications. Cell phones are not the best, and I've had plenty of cell phone conversations with lawyers since the lockdown occurred, and I can always tell I'm talking to somebody on their cell phone. I'm sure you feel the same way. Doesn't sound really good. Hosted voice over IP is a great option. So there's two ways you can set up a voice over IP phone system. So voice over IP means for the phone system to work, I only need an internet connection. I don't need a traditional copper landline phone line coming into my office, right? So you could either buy a system where you own all the equipment, and a lot of times these require a file server and some expensive little blinky boxes that go in your wiring closet. And then, if the power's out at your office, then that doesn't work. If the internet's out, then it doesn't work at your office. Hosted means the only thing I'm buying are the phones, and all the blinky boxes and servers are at the provider's place in some data center which has redundant power, redundant internet, redundant everything. So that is a way less expensive upfront investment for us. So my laptop, I'm talking to you on one of these right now, and I bought on Amazon for a couple $100, and this is a wireless, and it's either Bluetooth, computer, or phone. Like it'll connect to anything. There's 3 little buttons up here. You just push the one you want to do. So right now I'm on the one on the left because I'm connected to my computer via voice over IP, and the software I use for our phone system is on my laptop. So if I have, and this is what I carry in my computer bag when I'm on the road. So let's say I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I need to make a phone call. As long as my laptop's connected to the internet, it doesn't matter what country I am or where I am in the world, I am on my phone system. And even though there's nobody at our office right now, nobody that calls our office would even know that, because we have a receptionist at our Tampa office, a receptionist in our Columbus office, and they're answering the phones from their homes. So nobody even knows. And if they want to transfer a call to somebody else, they can see everybody in all the states where we have employees. They can transfer calls. They can see who's available, who's busy. And you might pay like $30 per user per month. All the calls you can make and every phone feature you've ever thought of in your entire life is all included in these systems. So you know, a lot of our clients use Ring Central, Vonage. Another one that is really good, we've had some really good luck with clients, is Nextiva, Nextiva. But if you just Google hosted voice VoIP, you'll see there's lots and lots of options. And this makes my whole phone system completely portable and not in any way connected to my office. Anywhere we are, we're on our phone system. So that's a big deal. You got to have a web meeting service. We talked about this earlier. Lots of people are using Zoom. Zoom's a pretty good deal. It's alleged that they might have some security issues. But if you go to affinityconsulting.com, compare web meetings, this URL at the bottom, we put together like a little grid comparing their various features and functions. I use Zoom. I have a GoToMeeting account as well, and we also use Teams. And that's another thing. If you have Microsoft Teams, which you do if you have Office 365, that includes all-you-can-eat web meetings. You should totally investigate that. Very easy to set up, and they work great. I mean, you can't beat the price. It's included for free. Better webcams. Unfortunately, right now, good luck getting a webcam because the entire world is trying to work from home. So they're like out of stock every place I looked on the internet. I have a C930E, and I don't have my webcam on right now, but it is a really awesome webcam, and it does not pixelate. And I've participated in tons of web meetings, like a Zoom meeting where you can see a little square of everybody's face. Mine always seems to look clearer than most everyone else's. It auto focuses, it auto adjusts for lighting. Just a really great camera. So I know that might seem crazy to spend 130 bucks. Yes, my laptop has one built in, but it just doesn't look as good as this. And I also like to have it up a little higher above my monitors. Like right now, my laptop is behind my external monitors, so it wouldn't be able to see me at all. And my webcam that's sitting on top of my monitors works great for that. They also make portable whole web conferencing systems. We have one of these in one of our conference rooms. So this is a super high def remote control camera that can see the whole room. These are microphones that you can lay out on the table so everybody can be heard well. And this thing connects to your Wi-Fi, and all you need is a computer and a web meeting service, and you're good to go. And this, of course, is completely portable. I can pick up all these pieces of parts, put it in my car, and go home, and have a whole web conferencing system at home if I wanted to do that. So you can get these on Amazon, roughly 1,300 bucks as a bundle. Instant messaging can be really important when you're all not physically present with each other. Another thing that Teams offers is instant messaging, secure instant messaging. So instead of sending people emails when all you have is a 2-second question, you just pop up an IM and get an answer and keep moving and not waste their time or yours on another email. So that's another thing that helps people connect. I know that might seem like a goofy juvenile thing, but we love IM and we use it constantly, particularly with people scattered over a bunch of states. You might also consider a virtual receptionist, and here are 2 really good ones that focus on legal. So Ruby or Smith.ai, and there's professional, English-speaking, North American-based, answer your calls, answer questions about your practice. They can put stuff on your calendar. They can screen potential clients. Like there's all these incremental services they offer, and all of those added up together are going to cost way less than having a human do all that for you. So particularly if you're going to be out and you're not going to be in the office, you want to have a backup or an answering service or something, even during the day or not during the day, these work great. Then this is another interesting thing, technology I came across. I've got a bunch of people and they're working at home right now. How do I know who's available or not? Well, these are inexpensive, easy to use, who is present and available and who isn't present and available. And people can update their status, and some of them update automatically. Like if I have the app on my phone and I walk out at lunch to take the dog for a walk, it automatically says I'm unavailable because it can tell that I'm no longer at my home. If that's where I identified to the app that's where, if I'm here, then I'm in, and if I'm not, then I'm not in. So interesting technology that you might come in handy for that. Getting documents signed. So yay, Michigan has e-notary and online notary. Not all states do. And so an e-notary is you have to be physically present, but they're signing electronically using the digital signature platform. And online notary is when you are not physically present, but you've got like a web meeting going on, and there's various criteria that have to be met. And then there's systems that this is the list the Secretary of State came out with, and they may have added to that, but these are platforms that you can subscribe to if you want to participate in that. Then, in addition, there's a Michigan Executive Order 2020-41, which actually relaxes the compliance with notary and online notary and remote notary services. So it'd be worth, if you're doing this and you need to get documents executed and notarized remotely, you can download on that URL that's on your screen right now the executive order and read through it. Now that's only going to be good for a period of time. It's a temporary relaxation of that, but it's going to expand the availability to a lot more people. Digital signature platforms have always been legal in the US, or at least since the Clinton administration when they passed some law that allowed that. DocuSign, Right Signature, I'm sure you've heard of these. I think these have to be in your portfolio, not just for you signing stuff, but to get signatures from other people when you can't all be around a table and do like a closing conference. Security and protecting client data. Michigan Rule 1.6, confidentiality of information. When transmitting a communication that contains confidential, and this is the comment they added, the lawyer shall take reasonable measures and act competently so that the confidential or privileged client information will not be revealed to unintended third parties. So all that means is doing nothing won't get you there. And this is a whole separate security seminar to cover all these issues in depth, but ultimately you need to, if you're going to be, for example, emailing something, regular email does not afford you a reasonable expectation of privacy. And in particular, if what you're sending is very, very confidential and would be damaging or harmful if it fell into the wrong hands, you really should take an extra step of like email encryption. Your security portfolio for this whole idea of like working remotely, if you've got a laptop that has access to or contains client data, it must be encrypted. So BitLocker comes free on Windows 10 Pro and Windows 8 and 8.1 Pro. And Mac, you have File Vault. You simply have to turn it on. So it doesn't cost you anything, but you got to turn it on. Your phone probably already is encrypted. Tablets all come with, Android and iPads come with encryption software. You just have to turn it on. You really should have an email encryption service of some kind. There are many to choose from. I really like RMail, is a really great, easy to use system. And RMail has the ability to send certified email, so that you can actually prove in court that someone opened your email. That's kind of a unique thing. Some jurisdictions use RMail instead of certified mail return receipt requested via USPS. So not only can you get encrypted email, and then another option is, depending on what bundle of Office 365 you have, they also have message encryption included. So, but you need something like that. When you're sending a regular email, you've got attachments that are very confidential. There should be some method of sending it encrypted. I want to make sure, like, what are my people using at home? Are they still using the old WEP encryption? How long have they had their router? I want to make sure it's either WPA2 or WPA3, and that they've changed their default administrative password. So every router, when you buy it for a home router, has some password by brand. And unless you change it, then anybody that's aware of what that password is will be able to hack into their router remotely. So you want to make sure they can't do that. Just basic home security stuff. If you're going to be connecting to ad hoc Wi-Fi networks and transmitting confidential stuff, then you want to have a VPN service. And all that does is lock down your otherwise open connection to like Starbucks or the library or wherever you happen to be connecting. I don't need to worry about this at home if my router is locked down. I need to worry about it when I'm out. And these are very inexpensive, like $3.50 a month. and it's an application, you click it, and it locks down your connection. Almost every security article you read will suggest as a baseline that you get a password manager. And a password manager, there's one, this is not on the web, this is on your local device, and you put in one beastly password, the only one you can remember, and that unlocks all your passwords. So when I log into a particular thing, it automatically puts in my login and my password. It also holds all of my credit cards, so it puts in the payment information. It's got my Nexus global entry ID, my passport, my driver's license. It's got every bit of personal information. There's another thing in the one I use called Dashlane. This is just a list of really good options. Dashlane has a thing called an encrypted note. So let's say my kids' social security numbers, the license plates, numbers for the cars I pay for, like any of that kind of information. Like I might need it and I don't know where to put it. You put it all into a password manager. Total game changer. And they also make up strong passwords for you, and you can start upgrading your passwords across the board. So they all have free trials. And this is a major improvement in most people's security profile. I used to use like a collection of 4 passwords that I could remember, and because I could remember them, they were weak. So you got to get beyond that, and don't use the same password for every service. And I couldn't do that if I didn't have a password manager. There's no way I could remember all those things. If you need a flash drive, guess what? They make secure flash drives, and you shouldn't be storing super confidential stuff on a flash drive. These things are lost all the time. Same thing with external hard drives. Yeah, of course they have external hard drives that are encrypted. If two-factor authentication is an option for the service, then you should enable it. And all that, it makes it more annoying to log in because you're going to have to do the login, the password, and then usually there's a number or a code is texted to your phone, and you've got to enter that as well. But that is a measure of security that is way better than just a login and password. Your logins and your passwords are likely to get stolen, but that does not defeat two-factor authentication. And then your computer remembers it, right? So like once you do the first, like when I log into my bank, the first time it'll go, I don't recognize this device. And then it's going to do the two-factor authentication. I got to log in and a password. They send something to my phone. Then after I enter the authentication, there's usually a checkbox that says, remember this device. And thereafter, it puts a cookie or something on your computer so it knows that you previously authenticated that device and it's you. But if somebody else had your login and password and tried that, it would make them do the two-factor authentication and it would fail. You're going to need some policies. So these are just things to think about for what's your internet usage policy, social media policy, secure password requirements for everyone, so they can't use password 123. That's not okay. What mobile security, if they're going to use their home computer or their personal phone to access client data, what are they allowed to do? I want to make sure their home devices, security is up to date, the operating system updates have been installed, that Wi-Fi is secure, a backup. And here's what I do, it's just to give you an idea. I use Carbonite Personal Plus, $72 a year, unlimited storage, and unlimited versions of all the files. I've got an external hard drive, and when I'm at the office, so Carbonite's running in the background all the time backing up my stuff. My external hard drive, I use Acronis, this software program you see on the screen, and it makes a complete mirror of my entire hard drive onto the external hard drive in my office. So I have an on-site and an off-site, and I've got a full mirror of everything, and I feel pretty confident there's no way I'm going to lose anything, knock on wood. I would also get a privacy screen. I keep one of these on my laptops at all time. They make these for tablets and phones as well, and basically you can't see what's on the screen unless you're sitting right behind it. Cloud systems. So basically, if you've been resisting this, it's time to get on board. And there's, you can rent servers, hosted servers, and you can just get systems that all run out of a browser, like NetDocuments or CosmoLex, which is a case management and accounting program. You can't avoid this. Like, you're already dealing with the cloud. I talk to folks all the time who say, I don't use the cloud for anything, and then I ask them a bunch of questions. It turns out they are. It's nearly impossible to avoid it. So you need to embrace this. Here's a list of really good, just a smattering, not by any way a comprehensive list, of good case management and accounting systems. And for example, ActionStep, Cosmolex, and Centerbase include full accounting, not just billing. So I don't need QuickBooks or Xero. ActionStep, Cosmolex, and Centerbase do everything. Not all of them do that. I think Zola also added full accounting to theirs. So these are, you pay X dollars per user per month, and you have full access to a complete centralized database for all client data that you can access from anywhere, and all your accounting stuff as well. Case management software, and I'll just jump to the last slide on this so you can see what I'm talking about. It basically allows you to keep track of every bit of case information and connect it back to a case or a matter that you're working on. Okay, so when I enter an appointment on my calendar, I have a calendar, and the appointment appears as you would expect it to appear. But when I entered the appointment, it also allowed me to connect it back to a matter, and that allows me to, when I look at the matter in the case management system, I can see all the appointments and all the contacts and all the tasks and all the documents and all the email, because every time they touch anything, they're connecting it back to the matter, and then it consolidates there. And because of that, I don't have to ask people what's going on. I can see what's going on. I can see what already happened. I can see the next thing that needs to happen. And that's fundamentally, and you can look at all the little boxes here on the PDF if you download this, to see what I think a case management program should provide to you. All this stuff should be included. It's a way of protecting yourself. If somebody leaves, can you determine, what they were working on, what's on their task list? Case management provides that. And what if something happens to you? Can other people produce your case list, recreate a file history, see what was on your task list? If not, that's not okay. So you need some kind of a system. It doesn't matter if you're desiring remote access or not. There's got to be some system that makes that information accessible to people. And then there's separate accounting systems. Now, all those case management programs I showed you, they all do billing and trust accounting. 3 of them or 4 of them also do full accounting. But if all you want is counting, you don't need the case management thing, then there's options for online access to that stuff as well. And here's another list. And if you got Office 365, there's all kinds of additional apps in there that you might not be taking advantage of, like bookings. I love bookings, forums, Kaizala. There's all the ones that I've highlighted here. And maybe you can make use of some of the other ones as well. But you log into your Office 365 account, you click on the All Apps button, and you'll see all these things. They're included. And they're so easy to use, you probably won't even have to read a manual. Drafting documents. So this is an email I got from somebody in Ohio right after this thing broke. Yeah, we've got computers and access at home, but I haven't figured out how to get all the letters, envelopes, and copies prepared without being in the office of my secretary. That's a problem. So that's really a function of maybe some hardware, but also his ability to draft documents. Templates are critical. So I need to start thinking about, instead of using old documents to create new ones, I need to start thinking about building something I always go back to. A lot of times the lawyer has no idea how these things are done. They just gather information, hand it off to a support staff person. Support staff person drafts the document, gives it back to them, and in a vacuum, the lawyer would have no idea how to do that on their own. That's why you want to build templates. Not only is it going to be faster and reduce the margin for error, but it's shareable. And then you've got something to feed and update over time so that next time you upgrade, and there's a lot of stuff built into Word by itself, so I can pick the answer to one question and it automatically switches the words and does verb conjugation and personal pronouns and prefixes. Word has always had that capability, and most people just don't take advantage of it, but you could and should. But first you have to have a template in order to do that. And then, if you decide to take the next step and do document assembly, which is a separate program that uses your documents, then you can build your entire decision tree into the software, answer questions, and it'll crank out the document for you. And I've got a list of document assembly tools here, but at a minimum, building templates that are shareable with others in your office electronically is another piece of being able to work remotely. And then if I don't have a secretary or a paralegal or somebody next to me, I can still do documents. Even if I'm a bad typist, I'm not paralyzed. And then finally, if you're not a good typist, you really need, this should be on your radar as well. This is absolutely amazing and inexpensive, and I would argue pays for itself in the first week. So if you want to run, they have one for Mac and they have one for Windows. These fluctuate between $250 and $300. They do have a legal version that you would only use if you do tons of case and statutory citations. Otherwise, it's an extra $250, probably not worth it. Usually that's right around $500, and this is around $250 to $300. And all you need is a $40 nice speech recognition mic that you can also buy on Amazon, and you're good to go. Or you can do Dragon Anywhere, which is an app that runs on any iOS or Android phone. And this is way, way better than whatever it comes on your phone. And it produces Word files you can email to yourself. So this is, and they have a 7-day free, or 1 week free trial. Absolutely test drive it first. But I think you'll find this to be kind of amazing. I was stunned at how accurate it was. And I can, you're carrying your phone around anyway, so you may as well dictate into it if that's what you're doing. And then finally, on the home workspace, paper and electronic files have to be secure. It's worth getting another docking station, monitors, keyboard, mouse for home. We pay for that for our people. We're like, if you want to set up your home office, by all means, tell us what you need. If you're used to dual or triple monitors at the office, you're probably going to want them at home. And it might be time to upgrade your internet access at home if it's bulky or slow and you're having problems with it. And by the way, if you've got a house that you've got dead spots in, something to look up is called mesh networking. So like in my house, I've got a mesh network using the Orbi, ORBI system. And I had some dead spaces in, like in my basement and one end of my house. And now I've got great signal anywhere, even outside in my driveway, my back porch. I can be anywhere in my house with no dead spots. So they've really solved the ability to create a cloud over a larger house where maybe you had trouble getting good signals before. You can absolutely resolve that. So anyway, I hope that gave you some good tips. Again, my email and contact information is on the screen. Welcome to the new reality, the new normal. Looking forward to this being over, but I think it's going to change things significantly. And just think about what you need to do to get prepared for the possibility that something crazy like this could happen again in the future. All this technology is out there. You can protect yourself, and hopefully this is a good checklist. Thanks for listening.